Welcome to the Creative Penn podcast. I'm Joanna Penn, thriller author and creative entrepreneur, bringing you interviews, inspiration and information on writing craft and creative business. You can find the episode show notes, your free author blueprint and lots more at thecreativepenn.com, and that's Penn with a double N. And here's the show. Hello creatives, I'm Joanna Penn and this is episode number 875 of the podcast, and it is Tuesday the 28th of July 2026 as I record this. In today's show, I'm talking to Brooks Elms, who has 20 years experience as a WGA screenwriter, and we talk about how building an audience in advance can help your stories reach the people who make movies and an audience, and how to prove there's demand for your book or screenplay before you've even written it. So we basically talk about making trailers and videos before even writing the full screenplay, which is what I have just done for Cathedral 0, my entry into the Future Vision X Prize competition, which is the context for the interview. And I've talked about that before, but I'll put another link in the show notes. It's essentially positive views of the future with technology and AI and everything instead of the negative ones. And this is a great discussion to have after last week's discovery writing episode, as Brooks's advice is completely different. Which for me is a positive thing, as it means there's room for every approach in the creative industries. And also different projects require a different way of doing things depending on your goals. So while I do normally write in a discovery way, with this project I have leaned a lot more on the rules of screenwriting as such. So that's coming up in the interview section. In Writing and Publishing and Book Marketing Things, a really interesting article from author Amy Chan on Substack on book marketing for her launch of Unsingle, a relationship self-help book, and it is titled, I spent $44,000 launching my book. 3 of those dollars worked. That is a hell of a headline. It is both a warning and also some ideas for lower cost things that work. So she starts with what not to do. And this was the big headline amount of money. So first of all, a $10,000 TikTok influencer campaign. Basically paying a influencer creator on TikTok to do videos. And while the video itself was good, she said it just didn't convert. There were 3 linked sales from that promotion. Now, of course, we know that a lot of authors who do use TikTok do very well, or can do very well. Of course, nothing works for everyone, but I personally know authors for whom TikTok works, but they are doing it about their own content, and they're not just making one video, they're making lots and lots and lots of videos, 5+ videos per day. So doing that, sort of the organic content versus paying someone $10,000 for a video. So spending big bucks on any influencer on any platform might not pay off, especially if it's a one-off. Then Amy spent $10,000 on an agency to book speaking engagements in the hope of then doing bulk sales. They booked 0 engagements and said that results weren't guaranteed when she paid. They did refund a portion of the fee though. And then a $24,000 PR retainer for 4 months, which did result in one particular media appearance, which Amy thinks made 200 book sales, and the social shares had a lot of reach and credibility. But for $24,000, that seems a lot. She also spent money on cute merch for influencers. 20% of those who received the package shared a story, but nothing moved the needle. And she said, Instagram is not what it once was, although again I would put that in the same category as paying influencers in general. If people are just sharing one post on one thing, it doesn't get seen as much as lots of content on the same thing. So then she does go into what worked. She says podcast interviews, not all, but some, resulted in sales. Now, hooray! I know this, as many of the guests of this show report getting sales after an interview, but it has to be something the audience want. So I get a lot of pitches from people onto this show that say, I finished my novel and I want to come on the show to talk about it. And that, of course, is not interesting. It's not interesting to me and it's not interesting to you, because for this show, the novel itself is not usually the point. I'm far more likely to interview people about a non-fiction book that is useful, like Stephen James last week. I have no doubt that some of you bought Stephen James's craft book for writers because it was a useful interview. And some of you might try his fiction, but it's far more likely that you're going to buy his non-fiction. So this is really important around podcasting. If you do an interview that doesn't have a book that is aimed at the audience, then it is essentially not necessarily going to sell. I also disagree with Amy. She talks about choosing podcasts to go on. She says, the way to piece together whether a podcast is worth doing, look at the podcast reviews and the host's Instagram following. And she just said earlier in the post that Instagram is not what it was. So I'm not sure why it matters. And certainly for me, I have something like, 11,000 followers on Instagram, but we get a lot of downloads on this show, and my listeners, you lot, are far more important than my Instagram followers. And so consistent weekly downloads on a podcast is far more important than a host's Instagram following. And also having an audiobook available in case listeners prefer that. Now, in terms of finding numbers of downloads on a podcast, it is not easy. Now, I post my stats on the website, but a lot of podcasters don't. There is a service called Rephonic, rephonic.com, which Claude recommended when I asked it. Might be worth it. Is a paid service, which usually you do get what you pay for. So 1 month membership to find effective podcasts. I think it was under $100. If you did that for 1 month and then pitched specific podcasts to target, that might be more effective. And remember, it is not about pitching the biggest ones. So you're not aiming to pitch the Tim Ferriss show or Stephen Bartlett for Diary of a CEO, whatever. Those are usually invite only kind of podcasts. It's about pitching the smaller ones with a consistent listenership who actually match your target audience. And it might be tangential to your audience. So for example, I was absolutely thrilled to go on the Yale Divinity School podcast around talking about pilgrimage, and perhaps not my biggest potential audience, but I absolutely loved that interview and was really happy that was a sort of a very good target audience for pilgrimage, but not for most of what else I do. Now, you can, of course, also ask Claude and ChatGPT to find you appropriate podcasts to pitch and angles to pitch with. They will find what they can about the reach of the podcast, and they will have excellent information about the host and will even write you a suitable pitch email based on your book. So that is definitely where AI can pull its weight for sure in terms of book marketing. So what else worked for Amy in her post? She says doing events. She did 5 in-person events and sold 300 books. The ticket price included the book. And she says the additional benefit is that you get photos, people share on social, and you create buzz around your book. Plus, you get to meet readers face to face. And that brings you back to the entire reason you wrote a book in the first place. That purpose can get lost when you're chasing numbers and bestseller lists. Yes, absolutely. And seeing actual And seeing actual people who want your book can make you so much happier than watching numbers on a screen. And if you are at a book signing and you have, let's say, 100 people, or even 50 people, or even 25 people queuing up to get their book signed, that is a happy thing. And so the numbers online can really skew what real people are. So be happy that you have even 10 people who want to buy your book at a live event is an exciting thing. Amy also used hidden gems for reviews and did a Goodreads giveaway for $119. Now I was like, oh yeah, Goodreads giveaways. Now I did a Goodreads giveaway, the last one must be over 5 years ago. It was, no, probably even longer, probably 8 years ago, when they only allowed print books. This was before Amazon bought them. The Goodreads giveaways were more expensive. And of course, if you only do print books, you have to send the books to people. And so it was more expensive. So you paid for the giveaway, and then you paid for the books, and you paid for the shipping. And since many of the readers are in America, I was paying for shipping to America. So I decided that it was too expensive to do Goodreads print giveaways. But I just went back on, spurred on by Amy's post, and found that yes, indeed, you can now do Kindle giveaways. So I have booked one for Bones of the Deep, which runs August 5th to the 20th, 2026. I've put the link in the show notes. You can sign up if you want to enter for that. And I just thought, well, it's worth it. $120 essentially to test whether it is worth doing. And as I have talked about before, the AI AIs, ChatGPT and Claude in particular, seems to pull from Goodreads. So when you do a Goodreads giveaway, people who enter can add it to their shelf, and so it may well deepen the signals for the AI systems. I am not guaranteeing that at all. It is just something that popped into my mind as a potential. So yes, Goodreads giveaways, $120. And if you're seeing here doing a Goodreads giveaway, doing a month of finding out podcasts to pitch, for example, all of these will not cost you $44,000. So I think this is so important. So Amy says, if I could rewind, I would take the $44,000 I spent on influencers, the speaking agency and PR and put nearly all of it into Amazon ads. Amazon ads reach people who are already on Amazon looking for a book to buy. I'd probably test out a meta campaign as well. She also said, spending so much money and seeing my sales fall flat on its face was heartbreaking. That's why I'm sharing my lessons so that at least my pain can be for something. Well, thank you for sharing, Amy Chan, and her book is Unsingle, How to Date Smarter and Create Love That Lasts. So it is dating self-help, relationship self-help. So perhaps this mention might sell some books, and I think that article is probably going to go far more viral than her TikTok influencer campaign, for example. So I really appreciate Amy sharing that, because it's pretty hard. That's a hard thing to swallow, that amount of money. Most people wouldn't even have that amount of money to spend in the first place. I've certainly never spent that amount of money on book marketing all at once. Anyway, I guess if you look at over the last 20 years, I would have spent more than that. But we tend to spend money on marketing with the plan to make the money back through book sales. So yes, and I should mention there, Amazon ads don't necessarily work for everyone and every book. I find they work far better for my non-fiction than my fiction because I write cross-genre, whereas meta ads do work well for cross-genre fiction, but they have the unfortunate benefit or downside, depending on your perspective, of having comments. What I love about Amazon ads is there's no comments. That is, to me, well worth it. But yes, Amy Chan's book is Unsingle. So if you are looking for a relationship book, why not give that a try? So in personal news, we went up to Warwick University for Jonathan's MBA graduation last week, which was a real milestone for both of us, really. The last few years have been intense. And I was struck at the ceremony. It was pretty emotional. It was super people-y. It was people-focused, lots of families, lots of support, everyone dressed up very nicely, and reminded me again about in-person events and making memories, and certainly, I think the dressing up as well, and of course the gowns and the hoods, and an occasion, and getting away from the screen as much as possible. And paradoxically, I think AI is making it much easier for me to get away from the screen. I am doing more outside. I'm doing more peopling in general, more social events, more random things. And I think it's because Claude can do so much now, and ChatGPT can do so much of the admin. It can do so much of things like social media, for example. I'm almost completely off social media because I have got to the point of feeling how much is it worth doing if it can be done by AI. So I'm really going through a sort of questioning every single thing I'm doing. I'm doing a lot of scaling back of things. I'll talk about it more when, probably by year end, I'll have sorted out my plan, but I'm really restructuring things around using the AI tools for helping me do stuff and freeing up my time to do more life things and in-person things and away from the screen things. And I've been deadlifting and weightlifting throughout the last few years, but I went to work out this morning and did my heaviest deadlift in a long time. So I was really happy with that. But also, coming back to the graduation, I was thinking how bad we are as authors about celebrating our milestones and the rite of passage. Graduation is a real rite of passage. And as authors, we don't get to do it all at once. So I think what's nice is the graduation is lots of people doing it at the same time. And as authors, we're all doing it at different times. So there's no graduation process as such. Hopefully you will at least have a glass of champagne or whatever you toast with to celebrate the launch of a book, or at least your first book. So I definitely have pictures of me with a glass of champagne and my first novel, Pentecost. I have pictures of that. I had a couple of friends over. We toasted that. That was a real thing. I've never done launch events, not so keen on that. But I do think we get worse at celebrating our successes as the career moves on. For many of us, the joy is in the creation, not the launch, not the marketing. It's in the, I just love to write this book, or I love creating this story, or I really love getting my first hardback in the post now. I show it to Jonathan and I'm very proud. I'm like, look at this, I made this, and I do love that. So thanks to Book Vault, who enable us to do these beautiful hardbacks. I am so proud of them, ridiculously proud actually. So it did make me think that perhaps we need to come up with some kind of more of a rite of passage, or we need to do more collaborative launch events together as authors. Say, okay, instead of everyone launching separately, maybe we could try and do some more together in-person launches, memorable moments, so you don't have to do it on your own as well. But yes, you don't have to do a big expensive launch party. You don't have to spend all that money like Amy did, but certainly consider making some kind of moment around your book that is celebratory and worth a photo, because it was a lovely weekend with Jonathan and a real moment. It has also spurred me on with finishing energy for my own master's in death, religion and culture. So I am back to my dissertation and I have the shoulder pain to prove it. So Sunday we got back and I basically I did a hardcore day on Sunday. Those of you who know academic writing know how absolutely exhausting it is. But no, I'm well back into it. It is going to be finished in August. Yes, it is. And it's interesting how the dissertation has evolved. I started with it on digital necromancy, which is bringing individual authors back from the dead based on their data so Agatha Christie, for example, presented a writing course last year. Of course, Agatha Christie is not alive. Val Kilmer is acting after his death, actually as the main actor, not just as a side actor in a film this year. So there's some really interesting examples of this, and my opinion on this has shifted, as it should, as you study things. So more on that once it's done, but head down on that for now. Also, while we were up in Warwick, we visited Coventry Cathedral, which is just wonderful. So the old cathedral there was bombed in the Second World War, and the ruins still sit there as a memorial with the burned spars of the old roof now across. And next to it there is just a brilliant modern cathedral filled with modern art and beautiful chapels, and it's just wonderful. And now I love ecclesiastical architecture and symbolism, and of course Gothic cathedrals being my favourite, but an ultra modern cathedral done well is a beautiful thing. I took lots of photos and I've put an article on my books and travel blog, which is at booksandtravel.page/blog. I'll put a link to that in the show notes, and if you're on my email list, I sent that out to people because I just love cathedrals, obviously. Check that out if you'd like a little walk around Coventry Cathedral, virtually, of course. Thanks for your emails and comments and photos this week. Parker left a comment about Stephen's interview saying, I inhaled Stephen's book on the pivot a year ago. I'm a discovery writer like you and Stephen. Plotters must think we're lost in a disorganised mess. The genius of Stephen's approach with his scene questions is that these add a brilliant way to organise that mess while still keeping the free-flowing creative edge. Thank you, Parker. And then Steve sent a picture saying this is the Church of St Mary de Horror here in Shoreham by Sea, which is in England, writing a horror comedy inspired by it. A lovely English church under a blue sky with a war memorial cross. And Carrie said, in addition to graveyards and memento mori, I can now add a Louisiana vanity plate to things that make me think of you. And sent a picture of the rear end of a car with the number plate Vanuatu. And for those of you who don't know, Vanuatu is a group of islands in the South Pacific. And for Bones of the Deep, I wrote about essentially set on a tall ship journey between Fiji and Vanuatu, which is a trip I took back in 1999. And I think many of you had never heard of Vanuatu before. So pretty interesting that there is a Louisiana number plate with Vanuatu on. I imagine they came from that country. So thanks for that, Carrie. And Kay said, I went to a giant fundraising book fair at Docking Church in Norfolk. Couldn't resist this photo, and it was a festival of book sign in the graveyard. Books and graveyards, you can't get much better than that. Lots more comments, but I also just wanted to read this from Gigi, who says, "Thank you for your July 15th podcast about your decision to switch to Wednesdays, along with tips for sustainable creativity. It came at the perfect time. I'll be releasing my 20th novel soon, and while I adore writing and publishing, I'm at a similar stage where I'm evaluating which are the pieces I'm keeping and which I'm changing. My 21st novel is a bit of a shift for me in terms of the process, and I'm making other publishing changes as well. I'm loving it so far, but I'm also a bit nervous. Listening to that episode was exactly what I needed right now." Thank you, Gigi. And as I said, I'm also going through sort of publishing changes to the process. And I said at the beginning of the year, and those of you who were in my AI webinars, this is all about looking at your processes and changing your processes, simplifying some, evaluating others, moving some over to AI. In fact, right now, as I am recording this, I have Claude going through my email list, tagging cold subscribers, and we're going to clean up my email list, which is one of those tasks I have not done seriously for a couple of years. And we all know that if you don't clean your email list regularly, it gets very expensive, and you only want people on your email list who actually open your emails and click things. But it's one of those tasks that I don't enjoy. So I just have Claude doing it on the side while I talk to you. And things like that mean that I'm finally able to get stuff done that I've been wanting to do for a while. And also it might cut down my monthly email list bill as well, which has definitely got bloated in the last few years. So yeah, I think we all should be reevaluating what we keep doing for ourselves, which for most of us, let's face it, is the creative bit. That's what we love. And then the other stuff, we're like, okay, can AI do this for me? Do I need to do it at all? That's another good question. And how can I change my processes to make my life more fun? Okay, please leave a comment on the podcast show notes at thecreativepenn.com or on the YouTube channel. You can email me, send me pictures of where you're listening or your favourite cemetery or churchyard or cathedral, joanna@thecreativepenn.com. I love to hear from you. It makes this more of a conversation. Today's show is sponsored by Kobo Writing Life, the self-publishing platform built by authors for authors. KWL is dedicated to empowering your indie career and helping you connect with readers worldwide. Ready to amplify your book's reach and boost sales? Kobo Writing Life offers a powerful suite of promotional tools designed to put your books directly in front of eager readers. Leverage strategic % off sales, buy more, save more bundles, and prime homepage placements to drive discovery. On a personal note, I go on to KWL every few weeks and apply for every promotion I can. I won't get all of them, but I get some of them. And bundles really do well in Kobo promotions, and they also have opportunities for books in translation, as they have many partnerships with independent stores in different countries. So if you want to go wide with translations, also check out Kobo. Start promoting on Kobo today at thecreativeprenn.com/KWL. And that landing page has all my books on Kobo in ebook and audio, and also useful episodes of the Kobo Writing Life podcast, which you can listen to wherever you're listening to this, and is a fantastic long-running podcast with all kinds of craft and business information. So that's thecreativepenn.com/KWL. This type of corporate sponsorship pays for the hosting, transcription and editing, but my time in creating the show is sponsored by my community at patreon.com/thecreativepenn. Thanks to the 6 new patrons who've joined this week, and thanks to everyone who's been supporting for months and years. If you join the community, you get access to articles, video and audio covering writing craft, author business and AI tutorials. Last week I did the Patron Q&A, which is a solo show where I answer questions on all kinds of things. And this week is live video office hours. In fact, it is on the day this goes out is live video time. And we jump on Zoom and I answer live questions and do demos. And it is a good in-person hangout time. And of course, if you can't make it, you get the replay. The Patreon is a monthly subscription, the equivalent of buying me a black coffee a month or a couple of coffees if you're feeling generous. So if you get value from the show and you want more, come on over and join us at patreon.com, patreon.com/thecreativepenn. Right, let's get into the interview. Brooks Elms is a WGA screenwriter with over 45 scripts, over a dozen sales, and he has directed 2 indie features. He is the creator of the Answer the Call system and has trained over 1,000 writers. So welcome to the show, Brooks.
It's awesome to be here.
Fantastic. So first up, tell us a bit more about you and how you got into screenwriting.
I started filmmaking first. I had a buddy came up to me in high school and said, "Hey, we're making a karate movie. Do you want to help us?" I was like, "Oh my God, yeah, that sounds amazing." And so next thing I know, I had this karate outfit on and we were just making this completely ridiculous and totally fun movie. And it was amazing. It was so fun. And then it went to a whole nother level when we shared it with a friend, this guy Jay Sharon, and he watched the movie and he laughed so hard he literally fell out of his chair. And I was like, oh my God, the fun I had making it could actually transfer to somebody else. And I was hooked. So from there, I went to NYU Film School and then made a few independent feature films, which were good, but not great in terms of how they were received. They were great for me in terms of enjoyment. But I knew I needed to iterate faster at that point. So then I was like, well, it's expensive and it takes a long time to make a movie, at least back then. So I then pivoted to screenwriting and then pumped out 2, 3 scripts a year, got signed at UTA and got writing assignments. And then so basically launched a screenwriting career and then still tried to get some stuff going. But it's hard when movies are so expensive. It's not hard. It's just, it takes a lot of precision in the marketing and a lot of conversations to find the right matches to finance something. And you're either interested in doing that or you're not. And I just was like, well, I'll just mostly write screenplays. And then I started teaching at UCLA Extension and then coaching after that, along with writing. And then all the way up to the future, what's great about moving forward is with AI shot making becoming very close to cinematic quality. You can actually match cinematic quality in moments in some genres, but probably by next year, like right now, you could actually do a really good horror movie, all AI for 10, 20,000 bucks, depending on how much you're doing it or getting other people to do it. And so the economics are going to absolutely explode. And so I'm sitting on dozens of scripts that didn't get through the Hollywood packaging bottleneck because they're too expensive, that I have this giant slate that's ready to go. And I'm just absolutely thrilled. It's been a lifelong dream for me.
Oh, so much to come back on there. Oh, where to start? I do want to actually talk about what you just said there, sitting on dozens of scripts and now
Yeah.
seeing the opportunity. I actually wrote down in my journal like a year ago, I see what's coming with AI, and I think that the best thing I can do is create as much original IP as possible.
Yeah.
So that I can make the most of the opportunity ahead. So I guess let's just get into the AI because a lot of people feel it's a super bad thing, but maybe talk about the opportunities and the attitude that you've got and that you've seen others have around this for what is ahead in a positive way.
Yeah. It's fascinating to see how people respond to AI. I wonder, like when the printing press rolled around, if there was some sort of backlash. Books must be handwritten; they can't be mass produced. I think it has to do with. Here's my. Here's one of my theories that at a deep psychological level, it's so profoundly powerful that I think the default setting is, oh crap. When I was a kid, some things were hard and that power imbalance, when something big, new, and powerful comes along, I'm going to get screwed. And so this is somehow a bad thing. I think that's the base psychological thing going on with, I think, most of the noise. Not some, obviously, there are some legit problems in terms of copyright infringement from learning models or from some of the environmental situation. So I'm not saying it's all rainbows and butterflies, but I think 90% of the noise around it comes from just really a fear of change and a fear of, and here's the other one. So fear of, oh, yikes, I'm going to get taken advantage of somehow by either robots or the corporations are going to use the robots against me or something like that. And I have real empathy for me when I feel that way a little bit, but I don't feel it much, and other people that do feel it. But the other thing is, you know what it is? I think they fear their own empowerment even more. I had a therapist who was really good about it. He said people aren't so much afraid of failing as they are afraid of succeeding. Because if we fail, we're stuck in act one. We don't go anywhere. The fear is answering the call and going to act two when everything effing changes in the new world. So I think people are afraid of how goddamn powerful they're going to be when they can have a team of AI agents helping them do everything they want in business or life or whatever. And I think it's sort of the same thing with the internet. People are like, oh, I don't like social media, blah, blah, blah. And I get it. There's a lot of noise and a lot of crap. And yet we have access to people. And the algorithms and social media right now, I think, are level 3 out of 10. They're just going to get better and better but even as it is now, if I do a post about something and it gets ignored, that's on me. The algorithms are trying to match me to my people. And so if I'm not unique enough and authentic enough and aware enough of how virality works, that's on me. And it's a learnable skill that I can embrace and then change and then get better at it. And so I think people then resist that change. They resist the empowerment of learning the art of virality or learning the art of some sort of social media stuff or whatever. And I think the last thing I'll say about this rant is I don't want to act like I'm the guru on the hill that has all the answers. I refuse calls all the time. I'm scared about all sorts of things. I'm certainly not perfect. And I feel frustrated when I'm trying to put my big ideas into action and I can't get this technology thing to work or that one, and I throw tantrums. I'm trying to come at it from a real human perspective. But by and large, I've got stars in my eyes. I'm like, this is amazing. This is going to be so powerful for so many people if you're ready to embrace it and just go along for the ride, because there's going to be some big ass changes. And there already is, and that's going to accelerate.
Yeah, and you mentioned there learning the art of whatever it is. And one of the things is, oh, I've spent 20 years and so have you learning our craft and our art, and now it can be done very easily. And I'm generating video, as you mentioned, which is a craft I haven't spent 20 years on, but now I can generate. So things have definitely changed in that way. But just coming to the screenwriting side, so I probably about a decade now did my first screenwriting course. I've written screenplays. And then I looked at the game you have to play, and like you said, the conversations you have to have, the events you have to go and network at, the all the things that you have to do to put a screenplay in front of the right person at the right time. And I was like, I cannot do that. It's just not going to happen. I can't do that along with everything else. So I put it aside. But now I feel maybe it's time to bring it back because things are changing. So can you maybe talk about if someone has a screenplay now that they've written or some IP, like a book that they have now, what would you recommend people do now in terms of wanting to get that in front of somebody or doing something with it themselves?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And by the way, not even, a screenplay. You could do the same things with a novel. You're basically, let me try to be succinct here, which is a good challenge for me. A simple way to look at it is you're giving samples. Let's say it's a lemonade stand, right? And you give out a little shot of maybe you have cayenne pepper lemonade or some sort of fun lemonades. But if you give out a sample and people are into it, they're going to come back and they're going to tell friends or whatever. If you give a sample of the lemonade and they're not into it, then you go back to the kitchen and you mix up a different flavor, right? So that's some basic business, but the internet allows us to do that at scale. And so what I like to encourage people to do when I coach people to do is come up with the minimum viable material. It can be a 10-second clip. There's a writer in my community who made a really beautiful 16-second movie. It's one shot. I love it so much. It's one shot. It's two wine glasses. There's a lipstick smudge on one of the wine glasses. They're half full. And it's just that shot. It's sitting there. All of a sudden, you hear this thumping down these stairs. Dun, 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 dun. And then you see out of the corner of the frame, one person runs by. And then the other person behind her runs by and goes, wait. And that's it. That's the whole movie. It's 16 seconds. But he did that with his phone. And so there's so much going on. There's a couple basic elements, but he just did it with his phone. And you can evoke enormous emotional impact on people through social media, whether it's just words. You guys have a big advantage as novelists because you guys are so good with words. And so whether it's a little bit longer, like sudden fiction, that's, I don't know, a couple pages or whatever, but even just like copywriters are really in a good position for the future because they're super potent with 2 words or 3 words or 10 words or whatever. And then I think novelists are probably really, because it doesn't cost anything to just put some words out in the internet. The point is, if you put something out, it's a signal. And you're talking about billions of people who could find that signal. And if you do it and then you look at the response and then you try again, you look at the response, and we can do this iteration infinitely for free. And so you can do it already. You've been able to do it for 10, 15 years or whatever, 20 years just with words. But now you're going to basically be able to do that with movies or clips or trailers. So the thing that I'm leading in my community of writers is having people build trailers in advance or clips or whatever, any sort of, when a book or a movie is done, how the heck do we get people to see it? One way is a trailer or some sort of behind the scenes material or whatever. You can just do that stuff now before even writing the screenplay. I saw that you were doing this project for a trailer for this competition. And then you mentioned, I got to write the screenplay, whatever. Not really. You have to develop the story enough to know what you're referring to. And then it's about studying the craft of either trailer construction or whatever the clips are, or like viral clips. They have a structure. And then you just test it. And if you enjoy that testing process, which I find absolutely thrilling, it feels like I'm like a stand-up. It's like the filmmaking version of a stand-up comedian. If I did stand-up, I say a joke, they laugh or they don't laugh. It's really beautiful feedback from the universe. Nerve-wracking, right? But you know it. We can do that now as storytellers. We put a story out there in any format and the audience responds. And you have to just like you have to read any room, you have to learn, how do you read the engagement in social medias? What do likes mean? What do shares mean? What do comments mean? How do you deal with trolls? Like all that is just part of the new art. But once you get good at it, holy smokes, like that's the key to the kingdom. You can build audiences in advance, and you can even, for movies, you can even have them finance your movie in advance. If you've built an email list of 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 people because you kept putting out all these viral clips around your story, novel or screenplay, then you have that, you go, okay, now that 30,000 people are on my email list and I tell them about me and my perspective and my world or whatever, we're going to make this darn thing with AI for 20,000 bucks. You guys got to pony up some money, put $1, 5, 10, or you get the VIP $500 experience, like crowdfunding, but much more sophisticated, because most crowdfunding was like begging friends and family to donate to your crazy dream. What I'm talking about is going to the audience directly and basically developing enough of the story, then going to the audience second, and then only when they validate the idea to the extent that you're happy with, like you could do a crazy idea that it's going to have a small audience, and as long as, even like, you don't have to have a blockbuster audience, you get to pick the audience size that you want, and then put the samples out there and see if you have a relevant audience size for this next project. And once the audience tells you, yes, we want this, then you go make it. And so you're ultimately reducing risk completely, almost zero. It takes time and you have to learn how to do this stuff. But it's thrilling to me because we just have the capacity to test the material and listen to the audience up front. Like the last thing I'll say, and I rambled a lot, I'm sorry. I made a movie in 1994, a feature film right out of NYU. And it took me 3 years to find out what the audience thought about that movie. I had to make the damn thing, and I ran out of money, and it took me years to edit it, and I finally got it, blah, blah, blah. And again, I loved it. I loved every facet of it, and it was fine. But it was super inefficient. Like today, I could take those same elements, create an AI trailer like this weekend, put it in front of hundreds of thousands of people, and they could tell me right away, this sucks, or this is interesting, or holy smokes, this is amazing, I want this. And if it's not, holy smokes, this is amazing, I can go ahead, re-edit the whole damn trailer and just keep reiterating at almost no cost. And then once the demand is there, then, by the way, I can go take that demand and that audience and go to Hollywood, and that's when they're going to want to work with me. Then it doesn't take a million conversations and finding the needle in the haystack, because Hollywood sees the numbers and they go, oh, you're the people we do want to do business. You've proven demand. we want to do business with you.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And of course, and I can hear people listening and they're like, yeah, easier said than done getting an email list of 40,000 people. And in fact, it's exactly the same as building up a career as an independent author. But this is as a filmmaker, as a visual person, and the industry is visual, doing a visual trailer is the obvious thing. And as you say, the tools I use just to do this one, I use Midjourney and I use Dance as the main video model. And it does take a while, but it is pretty fast now if you have a visual image of what you want in your head, which obviously you're a visual person as well. But hold
on, I want to push back on that a little bit because I think it's really important. So yes, that's true, but underneath that, my friend, it's a relationship. It's the relationship, and the media is secondary. So you have been prolific in connecting with your audience, and that's why I think a lot of people like you, because you share and they get to know you in that sort of cadence. I saw you in another podcast. You mentioned Seth Godin, who just said, "Hey, I want to be the type of person that has this relationship with my audience. I'm going to share some of my thoughts every day." So he happened to do it with words, with his background in marketing, but you could do the same thing with still images. You could do the same thing with a 5-second movie clip once a week or whatever. It's the relationship you want with your fans. And that is, yes, it's still, I'm not saying you snap your fingers and you have 50,000 people on your email list. What I'm saying is, what else are you doing? If we're artists and our impulse is to create and share, and if you do it in this way, if I can create and share and inspire trust in this relationship with a stranger because they like my genre thing and the way they felt when they experienced my media, words, images, movies, doesn't matter. They just like the feeling and they go, ooh, I want more of that feeling. How do I get more of that? Oh, this person has this email list or community or whatever. And if I can do it with one, then I can scale it out. And so getting the first one or the first 5 or 10 samples, that is a whole process. But then once you do that, scaling up it's more of a mechanical thing. It's not even that hard, especially when you can do paid ads. So you can scale up very quickly if you have the sauce. If you don't have the sauce, it doesn't matter who you're related to or whatever. You got to get the sauce right.
Yeah, again, it's so parallel to the indie author community, absolutely. But I guess I just got to ask you, so is in the olden days, an author might write a screenplay or a screenwriter would write a screenplay and then they would send it, they'd find an agent, they'd pitch an agent, and I guess then they'd hope that someone would turn that into a movie. So is that just dead now? Is it realistically you need to get yourself out there, build the audience in the same way that it often is for authors?
So, no, I've got 2 screenplay deals going right now. So here's how it's going to work. Think about like Broadway or the theater district in Britain. It's like West End or East End or whatever. Sorry for my American ignorance. West End. Okay. So every town on the planet has a stage, but there's only one Broadway. There's only one West End, right? And every town has its own festival, but there's a few significant tastemakers. There's Cannes, there's Sundance, there's Toronto. Right? Hollywood is always going to be a tastemaker in our lifetime for sure. What they don't have anymore, what they enjoyed for the first 100 years of the industry, which they don't have anymore, they had a stranglehold on basically the equipment, the financing, and the audience. And that's all going away. Do you want to hear a fun story about the birth of cinema? Do you know why Hollywood started in Hollywood?
No.
So Thomas Edison invented the camera, right? Or the type of model camera that they were using in, I don't know, 1910 or something around there. And they didn't want to pay his patent. They didn't want to pay the patent to make these movies. So they went across the country, a bunch of outlaws, and they set up shop in California because he couldn't enforce his patent that they were basically stealing. And reason number 2, LA enjoys amazing weather almost all year round. Weather here is either nice or really nice. And you have mountains, you have beach, you have desert, you have all these different locales. So when it was really important to be on location, LA was a perfect place. Anyways, that is all going away. For many decades, more people could make. In the early 90s, Robert Rodriguez made a movie for $9,000. There was a book in the 80s that I bought that I loved. It was making independent films for used car prices. This guy, Rick Schmidt, I think his name was. Anyways, and there was independent filmmakers really in the 60s and the 70s. So the cost has been going down and down and down. And now it's less than ever. And once social media came along, now you have access to the audience. So why do you even need Hollywood? That being said, there's tons of people. There's 400,000 people already working in the movie and the TV industry here. And they're voracious. We have a voracious demand. Humans need stories. We need big stories, long stories. We need stories. So Hollywood is so good at giving them stories. And so they have a need for these things, and they're still spending a lot of money on those budgets. So yes, there's still a demand for turning books and optioning them and turning them into movies. Books are great. Any sort of existing IP is great because there's marketing efficiencies there. People already know that stuff, know the vibe of it. And so it's easier to market than something that's totally creative and new. And when you're spending that much money, you want those marketing efficiencies. They're really important. But the point being, the power is shifting away from Hollywood. Hollywood will still be a tastemaker, but all the logistics are going. You and me can reach anybody on the planet now, almost billions of people. And if it's making a movie, like I'm saying, like right now, you could make a movie that most people wouldn't realize is an AI movie. If it was like a horror film, I know a handful of people that could make a feature-length horror film right now with AI, and 99% of the audience couldn't tell.
I think the
professionally
point
written.
I think the point here though is I'm an author, the people listening are authors, and we don't want to make movies. We want to license our IP to people who want to make movies.
Yes. Great. Okay. Okay, good. So then you could, if you wanted, build an audience. So Hollywood loves when something's already proven. So that's that IP thing, right? So if you just have a great book, then it's all about the sales. You guys have Dragon's Den, or we have Shark Tank here. And what's
Yeah.
amazing about that show is where these are people, they're entrepreneurs pitching an idea. And there's amazing rhythm that happens. And they say, we've got this great idea. It's this sort of company. And the sharks or the dragons will listen. And there's a huge turning point when they reveal sales. They're either really excited about the idea and then they go, well, how are the sales? And the person goes, well, we don't have any sales yet. And they go, oh, and they're not interested. Or they might even be like, it doesn't seem like a good idea. And they're like, well, how are the sales? And they're like, oh, well, we've sold through the roof. And then all of a sudden they perk up. So it's all about the sales. So for you guys, if it's not enough so step one is writing something that you want. Step two is making sure other people in your target audience are also loving it as much as you do. Step three is proving in some way at scale that there's real demand for it. And so you could do that with trailers, you could do that with clips, you can do that with, as an indie publisher, right? There's all sorts of things that you can do, but humans are much more persuaded by concrete data than they are just vibes. And so Hollywood, if you can bring Hollywood concrete data of any type, like viral videos, like audience, like obviously bestsellers or whatever, awards mean something, but not quite much as sales, then you're going to get Hollywood's attention because that reduces risk for them. And so even now, when Hollywood's definitely shrinking and contracting, whatever, there's still very significant money being spent because it's a huge demand. If you ever walk around a studio lot, those things are opulent places. It's stunning. Like, how are they paying for all this stuff? You just walk, these lots are enormous. But it's because we have humanity is voracious for stories, and movies are one premium type of storytelling. And the demand for stories is steady, if not going up, but it's just, we have a wider variety of types of stories that we can do it. And now we can, whether we're an indie author. So anyway, did I answer the question? Yeah, you get me too excited with these questions, Joe. It's a problem.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of ways in, but it's the parallels with being an indie author, I think, are quite clear. But one of the things I found interesting about your profile and what you do is that you help clients who are already accomplished, but not quite breaking through. And that sounds like a lot of mid-list indie authors, probably a lot of mid-list screenwriters, mid-list filmmakers. And it's a hard place to be because on the one hand, like, we are grateful for what we have achieved and what we can do, and yet wanting more, wanting that big Hollywood deal or the Netflix deal or wanting the massive bestseller or whatever. So if someone wants to get to that next level, what are some of the ways that they can perhaps try and get there?
It's a great question. And coaching is a really wonderful way to learn anything of this sort of complexity and challenge, especially if it's like a hyper competitive business, because we need two things, I think, to write a great novel or screenplay or both or whatever. A, we need to feel profoundly safe in our space. If we can't really feel deeply authentic about our things that are embarrassing or we feel shame about, or just things that are shadows or anything that we don't feel completely comfortable saying and sharing in public usually. We need to be able to touch those things and be articulate about those things. And that's one part of it. And then we need a concrete path forward. Like maybe you're thinking about some tragedy that you had in childhood and how you dealt with it and how difficult that was. So you need to be able to be real precise in those observations about what it felt like and how you tried to compensate for it and that didn't work and it made it worse. Whatever your observations are about your life journey need to be really specific and really deeply felt. And a good coaching relationship allows you to be in that space, to be really honest with yourself and authentic. And a good coach will push you back and say, you know what, that sounds interesting, but maybe not quite as true to you deeply. So that's one piece of it. And then there's a concrete path forward. You need to have the emotional access to that truth, and then you need to know what to do with that truth in a step-by-step way. Because most people, of the ones that you're talking about, they're accomplished in something else. Because what happens is when we first start writing, and maybe this happens with novelists, but for sure it happens to screenwriters, you kind of just start kind of, you just start typing words. But you haven't really thought through the theme, the concept, the structure, the character, all the deeper questions that really matter. The milestones, like a North Star, like winning a major award or getting a publisher or whatever, like that's the direction that we're heading towards. And then you set it and forget it, but you want to keep checking it every week, every month or whatever. But you want it very specific. I would like to sell a book or, sell a book to Hollywood or write a screenplay or get a producer attached to a screenplay, whatever the milestone is, make it really specific, really concrete, and then reverse engineer. This is what I do on the concrete path. I reverse engineer every step to get there, starting with a really tiny one we can do today. And I make sure they feel really safe. And then we just walk through. And then what happens is, if you do that, if you feel safe, if you're showing up authentically and you have a process that's repeatable, not just willy-nilly, it's got to be something that's proven to work. It wasn't an accident. I wrote 45 scripts. I've got a whole system. But by the way, the first 5 scripts took me forever. The last movie that I made took me 3 years to write that script. I could write a better script with those same elements in 3 months now because I know I have a concrete path. So if you want to do something new, whether it's playing the piano or getting 6-pack abs or writing a screenplay, work with somebody who's got a system that's already proven and make sure you relate to them. And then just follow the system, and then when the doubts come up, and they will, that's where the feeling safe is really important. Because I want the 6-pack abs, but I don't feel like going to the gym. I want the extra donut. But if I'm working with a really good trainer, they go, dude, well, do you want the 6-pack abs or not? And then you go back and forth, and I go, okay, now I can make peace with myself and say, I take one tiny bite of the donut and then still do my workout, and then I'm moving towards that North Star. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think like many independents, I resist anything that is systematized. I'm a discovery writer, and I follow the muse and all of that kind of thing. But I think I would say something in a similar vein, which is sustainable creativity for the long term, because your 45 scripts are also years of work, and my books are years of work, and we get better at what we do. And so I do have a system really, because my system is that I do the work and I write my stories and I get them out there and I do the marketing. And so it's like, even if it's not as systematized as such, it's still a process that I have repeated over and over again.
That's fascinating to me. Would you consider yourself a pantser? You're like, I got an idea and then you just start writing?
I don't use the word pantser. I guess I call it discovery writing, which is
that's a better term.
Yeah, what I'm writing for this prize, for example, I know the characters, I know now what's happening. But when I had the idea, it was very much a vision and a theme, and the competition has a theme, a positive future with AI and technology. But the things that came around that, I then started playing with ideas around the treatment. I haven't written the screenplay yet, but in terms of, I don't do a plot, or I don't follow the Save the Cat or any of that kind of thing. When I write a novel, I just explore and I never write in order. And then at some point I stop and then I have to think about the structure and putting it all together. So the edits are quite big, but my fun is in that discovery, really.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so let me ask. So that's really fascinating. And that, by the way, that doesn't, to me, negate the system that I use. The one that I use is ultimately the thing is that these questions, the audience is wanting your unique answers to. You don't necessarily need to do it in a certain order. So, and I think that's actually really cool that you write out of order and you have a few elements in mind and you kind of like all that stuff sounds awesome. The only thing the thing that then makes me curious is how's your pace? Are you actually completing novels at a pace that feels good, or do you feel like you go too fast, too slow?
I do one or two a year at the moment, but for two a year really. But yeah, but I would say I'm not as successful as I'd like to be. So I'm not saying that my system is the best. I'm saying I want to be better. It's just my fun is this sort of creative chaos, which I then try and control later. One of the things I really like about screenplays and treatments and doing this kind of thing for film is that it is much more structured, I think, than a 70,000 word novel. You can go in all kinds of directions, whereas with screenwriting, you do have to be more disciplined, really.
Yeah, so that's that. This is going to be fun, probably, to hear my view for your audience and the differences as I see them. Yes, you're talking about that experience of, for starters, you're talking about what, 10, 20, 30 hours reading a novel sometimes, or maybe less, whereas a movie is a 90-minute experience, right? So that's different. Or if it's a TV series, you might see an hour and then an hour. So that's a very different experience. And what happens is when it's condensed like that, you're loading up layers. So every scene is stacked with exposition beneath the drama and done in a certain way. So specifically, movies are only what you can see and only what you hear. So whereas novels, if you can think it, you can write it, it can be in there. So you don't need to have a plot, but if you want to sell your book to Hollywood, it helps. And so I was very resistant about structure. So I went to NYU Film School where we really just made short films. And it was funny. I had friends that were in the dramatic writing department. And I was like, you guys are getting like, you're like wasting your money. You're just learning to write scripts. We learn to write the scripts and make the movies. What I hadn't realized is it's a different skill set to hold somebody's attention across an hour-long play or a 90-minute movie or whatever than it is to make a movie that holds their attention for 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. But I found out years later when I made a feature that was like a lot of sort of shorts patched together and people were not, they liked it, but they didn't love it. And I was like, well, what's going on? And so then I learned to really love Save the Cat in particular, completely changed because what happened was I got a big old slice of humble pie. I made my second feature and I put everything I had into it and it had loose structural beginning, middle, end, blah, blah, blah. But I was still, Hollywood BS. They can't, what do they know? It's all fake. And so I was very anti-Hollywood structure. And then I was well, like, now I've got two independent films out there. People saw them, like them, whatever, but it wasn't getting me consistent work. It wasn't really advancing my career in the way that I wanted. And I was like, well, maybe there is something to the Save the Cat. So I went to actually the Save the Cat workshop with Blake when he was still alive, and he was delightful, really awesome guy. And he's got this kind of cutesy style for people who don't know. So people, for context, Blake Snyder he was a working Hollywood screenwriter, and he had this system called Save the Cat, which actually has some really interesting ideas. He's got this very light, breezy sort of style. A lot of people don't like him, and some people really love him, and everything in between. But I took his weekend seminar and it completely changed because at that point I was just like I said, I took 3 years to write a script. And then once he had a process and he had a way of thinking about craft that was just much more screenwriter friendly. And I was like, oh my God, it was so much easier because I was just focused on the right thing at the right time. And so it just sped everything up. And after that, I was banging out 2 to 3 scripts a year and better quality. And so for me, because I went winging it, and wrote 5 scripts in 13 years, and then wrote 2 to 3 scripts every year, I became a huge component of system and process. And then my own system really came from that, but it's modular. So like I have a 9-step system, but you don't necessarily have to go in that order other than the last 3 steps, because the last 3 steps are about, but I won't get into the details. But and sometimes I'll kind of jump from like 2 to 3 and then back to 2 and then back and forth. So I love that you had those senses, you get the feel for those elements, and then you just felt your way through. But like writing screenplay pages doesn't make sense until you really understand concept. You get a deep sense of beginning, middle, end, character arcs, and these other threads. And there's just way better tools for those jobs than screenplay format, because it's a really weird format. It's got these weird slug lines at the top that are all in caps. And because a screenplay is a blueprint for somebody else to make the movie. It's not an end user document like a novel. I don't let my clients even go to that format, because it gets them focused on the wrong things. What they really need to know is, what is your perspective about this theme? What happened in your life that you're fascinated with, that you'd even want to write about this? And tell me what your real life lessons are. So we go into, again, I go back to relationship. What's your relationship to the universe? And what's your relationship to your best friends, or where you got your heart broken, or whatever you want to write about? And then we get that clarity. And then I show you how to express it in terms of what screenplay, in terms of developing a screenplay, but it's really long form storytelling. But the structure just makes it build on itself. But with the structure, because you're talking about so much money and people involved to make it, at least traditionally, what ended up happening was narrative structure that was not so much rigid, I think, because here's the thing. You can look at 50, 100 years of European cinema, and you can look at Hollywood cinema, and like Hollywood laps them. Like when I taught at UCLA Extension, I had lots of foreign students. And so let's say there'd be 2 or 3 students. If there was 12 people in the class, 2 or 3 people would be from America and everybody else would be from other countries. But I would go around, I'd be like, what movies and TV shows have you been watching? Almost in every single country, they watch half from their own country, half from Hollywood. So Hollywood storytelling works. Just that's the data. And they're dominant. And the reason it works is what Aristotle was saying thousands of years ago. There's a way of thinking about beginning, middle, end that just deeply speaks to the psyche. And you can ignore it if you want. I think Godard said you need beginning, middle, and end, but not necessarily in that order, which is great. But like, just the way we experience life. There's a beginning and middle end to this podcast interview. There's a beginning, middle, end to the day, a beginning, middle, end to me eating lunch. So if you don't lean into the beginning, middle, end psychological aspect of your story, you're going to bore your reader. And so, but to your point, you don't necessarily have to sort that out in the beginning. It's more efficient probably if you do, but you don't have to. Go into it wherever the muse tells you to go. And then at some point, like you do, then you go, okay, now I go back and I edit. But if you're saying there's another level, you have another gear in you, then yeah, I'm curious. I'd be curious to slowly go through how you're making those decisions. Because what's happening probably is there's probably ways you're holding back a little bit. There's maybe a little something you're afraid of being wrong about or something. That's usually where me or other writers are holding themselves back. And if we can take a look at that, and there's different ways I show writers to do it, then you can go, oh, I was doing it here and now I can do it there. And it could be with process or just a certain creative choice or whatever. I mean, with story, it's clear and compelling. Those are the simple things. And so is this clear enough? Is it compelling enough? And there's almost always ways to up level on any facet, whether it's one sentence or a sentence that describes the whole concept of the book or a chapter. Like each one of those can be looked at with that lens, and we can just say, hey, this is 70%, 80%, whatever. And then we say, well, how do we get a little bit more? And then when you do that enough, it piles up. And then especially if you bring in an audience and people are flipping out for your work, they'll tell you.
Yeah, I love a challenge. So thank you for everything you've shared today. So where can people find you and everything you do online?
Well, one way you can find me, if anything I said seemed helpful for you, if you have questions about Hollywood or you have a screenplay in your heart, you can just email me, brooks@brookselms.com. You could look me up on LinkedIn. I'm at Brooks Elms. And I also have a school community called Screenwriter Marketing, but it's really for any sort of storyteller. And it talks about my favorite way to engage audience and get through it. So anybody can jump into that if you like my vibe. But if you really think anything I've said or the way I said it seemed like it could be helpful for you, just reach out. Let me know what you're up to, and maybe there's a way I can help you.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for your time, Brooks. That was great.
You're welcome. It was a total pleasure. It was lots of fun, and I really appreciate you.
I hope you found the interview with Brooks interesting. Let me know what resonated with you. Please leave a comment on the podcast show notes at thecreativepenn.com or on the YouTube channel, or email me, joanna@thecreativepenn.com. Also, please send me pictures of where you're listening or your favourite cemetery or churchyard. Next week, I'm talking to non-fiction author Suzanne Smith about how she turned her expertise into a book and an online community and attracted a book deal from her success. So happy writing, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. You can find the backlist episodes and show notes at thecreativepenn.com/podcast. And you can get your free author blueprint at thecreativepenn.com/blueprint. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on Facebook and X at The Creative Penn, or on Instagram and Facebook at JFPennAuthor. Happy writing, and I'll see you next time.